All right. And with that, old business and past events. Paul, would you like to speak to the PA QSO party?
Sure. So I've got a little slide presentation that I put together on the Pennsylvania QSO party. Let me see if I can share screen here. Share. Hang on. I haven't done this yet. I mean, I do it for business, but not. Oops. Cancel. No, leave that there. How do I do this? Join a meeting. No, I don't want to join a meeting. I don't want to sign in. Okay, hang on.
No, it's, yeah, there you go.
We're seeing it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll see if I can put it in. Let me, tell me if
There
you
you go.
guys can
There
see
it
this.
is. That's
Yeah.
good.
Presentation mode, you're good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Drew. Drew, you're going to be my sound check man. If you can't see the whole page, you need to tell me, okay?
Cut off the bottom.
Sounds good. Stay on the paved roads.
Okay. All right. So the Pennsylvania QSO party, some of you have heard me talk about this before, others haven't, so I'm going to cover some things. So it is a friendly contest amongst Pennsylvanians. We have 67 counties that we try to contact, of course. This is equivalent to your 7QP over in Oregon and Washington in the 7th district. So this is pretty much the same sort of event, but Mike, can you tell me how many counties there are in the 7QP? Because I really don't know.
I think it's 300 plus.
Yeah, that's a lot. Okay. So it is achievable that we can get a clean sweep of 67 counties, but it's a lot harder to do in the 7QP because not everybody's going to be occupying those spaces, right? So anyway.
Well, especially if you're trying to get to Perry County.
Right. Thank you, Drew. So I wanted to talk to you about the multi-op event that we do every year. This has been going on for about 12 years now, maybe more. I don't have the exact number. It's at least 12. And we run as N3ZK, N3ZK. And we set out with a couple of goals every year, and we try not to change them too much. And we stay in the Western PA area. So that's like everything from Harrisburg, if you know Pennsylvania, which is in the center, west, and from there all the way to the Ohio and West Virginia border. And we try to get a clean sweep of all 67 counties. And we try to break the current record according to the website. And I'm not going to click on here, but I will send it to Anthony if he wants to keep it for records. Hang on a second. I got my video is covering my video screen. I have to change this. Hang on a second. How do I hide the video? There we go. Okay. All right. Now I can see my whole presentation. Sorry about that. Okay. Now I got all your faces out of here. Okay. So there's a couple of things that we try to do. We try to do a clean sweep of all 67 PA counties, and we try to break the record. We also try to improve ourselves as an operating team and break the current, I'm sorry, and improve our equipment where needed if we find that there's faults. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. And this is a good multi expeditionary discussion for those who take their equipment outside of their operating environment, kind of like field day, and know what to deal with. And so you can apply this to any contest where you're trying to do this, or maybe a field day location. So the history of our team is we've always kind of settled in around the 140,000 points for this contest. Now, I can't really what's the word, normalize this, because every contest scores differently. So don't be either impressed or unimpressed by this number. But we do have we do have 7 county records as this team goes through its various counties, and we try to achieve our goals. And actually, little teaser, we have 8 now. Okay. So this doesn't happen by accident. We do a lot of planning and reviewing. I'm in charge of obtaining the location where we're going to be operating. It's an expeditionary operation. We go to a different county every year. So that brings on some challenges where if you're going to the same place, you can almost improve right there on the spot what you want to do next for next year. But when you change your location every time, it's a brand new experience every time. This year, for those of you who love horses and dogs and goats, you will appreciate the fact that we had to encounter all 3 of those things and had to move the horses into the barn to get the antennas where they needed to be so that we could operate, right? So it was quite a negotiating event with the landowner. So one of the things that we do is we meet at a dinner to discuss lessons learned from previous year. That's our internal team. I do find a location for us to operate on. So that's either Airbnb or some other search efforts. So here's an interesting thing. Airbnb doesn't like you to contact the owners without a commitment. And of course, when you're trying to find a place where you can operate amateur radio, you can't just say, oh, I'd like to rent your 3-bedroom condo, right? You have to know how much land do you have? Can I put up antennas? Do you mind coax running across your driveway? And things like that. And so I typically code my emails through Airbnb to include my phone number and do it in such a way that it's like a coded NSA message, and it works every single time. So for those of you who don't know how to do that, figure it out. And, hello, my name is 7. Hello, I'm hoping to find if you would be interested in 2, and then you put in your phone number all the way through, and then they finally figure it out at the end. And you finally get a response, which is great. I do pump up the hobby and tell them that this is both a hobby. Oh, that's a typo. It's not a bobby, it's a hobby.
Not a British police officer.
It's a bobby and a service. Yes, thank you. So I tell them, I said, look, we're the last line of defense in communications. So I pump that up. I tell them we're practicing. We do this by having fun, and we do this by having a contest so that we can have something to motivate us to practice the hobby as a service. And so that, most landowners are like, wow, great, excellent, no worries. And then you perform a site survey check. So we do that. And as you can see, the accommodations that we had this year were quite plush. They were not tents and propane heaters. They were, quite accommodating, and I'll show you in a minute what we ended up doing. So one of the key things that we did was prior to October 10th, and we didn't quite do 40 days prior. I think we did it more like 15 days prior because of commitments. We set up a software day where we all brought our computers and or radios, and we brought them to one of our team's houses, and we just tried networking it all together to make sure that we were all on the same page. We could connect. We could run some scenarios where we logged some calls. We tried as if we were logging bonus stations and county lines and other challenges. And we tried to see if there was anything that we needed to run the kinks out of. And that was really, really valuable for us because we didn't have to deal with it on game day. One of the things that we learned is when you're running off of a N1MM application, if you can run the application on each computer as administrator, it allows the, I think, Mike, maybe you can help me here. Is it the NTP protocol or something that allows us to sync the clocks that such that we didn't have any problems? Do you remember this?
I don't remember that, but it is important that all the computers on there are all synced to the same source.
Right. Yeah, we had to do this. I don't know if it's the only way to solve it, but it's the way we solved it.
Yeah, that one doesn't ring a bell. I thought automatically when you started up N1MM, it automatically synced it to the server.
Yeah, so anyway, that's how we solved it. And it allows us to run a local server. And then from there, we connect it to a Wi-Fi or some cell server or whatever it is. Like when you guys did at the 7QP operation where you had to find the cell signal or the internet signal to be able to push out what you were doing. So same situation here. It always changes. Thank you, Mike. So we also focus on equipment and sustenance. So we each bring our own radios, computers, bandpass filters, and short runs of coax. So there's a cheap plug for low band systems. They did a great job in packaging up some great filter packages for us. Let me see if this will even work. Ooh, contacting the server. Sounds important. So this is what a bunch of us ended up ordering. We have this 6-band, you can see it, if I move my mouse, you won't be able to see it anymore. You can see the 6-band, 160, 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10. It's the contester. They call it Perfo box, but it's all of their low band system filters all packaged in one with some, and it's actually quite, what's the word, price competitive. If you were to buy these things individually from, like, say, DX Engineering, you can't buy it for what they're selling it to you direct. So I would encourage you to take a look at it if you're interested in doing that sort of thing. Okay, so I thought I'd throw that out there. Okay, whoops. I lost my place. Hang on a second. Okay, we do bring our own tables and chairs. I'll show you a picture of that later. You can see what we end up looking like. We do have a tower trailer. I have a couple of pictures of the tower trailer for those who haven't seen it. And it comes with a rotor, just a TV rotor, nothing fancy, but a 100-foot cable, and you know what, and it can turn that beam and aim it in any direction we want. So it's very functional. I end up usually trailering that because for some reason, I guess I'm the only vehicle that can carry that now anymore. I think they did that on purpose. Okay, so we do share the meals, and there's a couple of guys in the club that have a large stash of coax and tennis ball launcher and rope and whatnot. And we built our team needs over time, and we typically just say, what does the team need? And then somebody volunteers to go ahead and do it. Or they'll say, hey, this is too much, you know, we need some help with this. So we ask for some handouts, but that has very rarely happened. Feel free to interrupt if you have any questions, by the way. Okay, so typically what we do is our our contest runs on Saturday from noon to 1 a.m. and then from Sunday 9 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we all arrive on Friday. I didn't write that in here, but we all arrive on Friday pre-game, and we figure out where the antennas are going to go. Optimally, we go there ahead of time, or we use Google Earth to try to anticipate where the antennas might go. We did not have that benefit this year. We did have Google Earth, of course, but we didn't have the intelligence to sit down and try to figure it out. So we did this sort of on the fly. And I'll show you the antenna layout in a few minutes. We do enjoy a steak dinner. Actually, it's a beef tenderloin, and it was so good. Anyway, sorry, CQ Food Day, as I like to call it on field day, right? You guys all know that. So we do set up radios and computers and networking later on in the night, and then we collapse, literally, physically, and exhaustingly collapse around 10:30 at night, just completely wiped from the day, starting at 0800. And for those of you who know N1MM, you know what wipe log means. We've practiced a number of things. We're good with it. We're going to wipe the log, and then we're going to start over in the morning when contest begins. So I'm going to spend a little time on this one here. This is our exact location on Google Earth with pinpoints of where we ended up putting our antenna fields. And this is exactly almost tree to tree as to where things were hung because of the height of the trees and the availability of the land that we had available to us. And so this is about a 500 by 500 square-ish, roughly. It is a horse farm with, let's see here, where is it here? So here's our area here where we rented, and wait a minute. Somewhere up here, it doesn't even show it actually. It's a little bit, it's right above this image here, ladies and gentlemen. There's actually a two different apartments that this particular landowner offers as an Airbnb. So they rent like an upstairs and a downstairs. And so we had traffic going across here, and we had to get coax over to this side, and we did not anticipate how much trouble that would be with weight of coax and how many runs we had. And we had to jury rig some sort of a rope system. So that was one of our lessons learned, that we're going to just come across. We're going to try to come up with a, what do you call those things where you can drive over and then the cables are protected? There's a name for it. I don't know it, but the audio guys and gals probably know more about it than I do. So that's one of the things that we learned from this year, is we've got to be able to cross the road if that situation happens. And that was a big challenge for us, to go from here to this particular location across the road where people were driving, and we didn't want to get our coax run over. We had the tower here. We had a 160-meter dipole here. We put the Carolina Windom way over here because it tends to create a lot of in-band and out-band, out-of-band interference with all the other 40-meter dipoles. We had one running. So this is, so hang on a system. Hang on a second.
Paul, I'm not seeing any of that.
You're not seeing any share?
No, not at all. Just you.
We're seeing the map with the antenna field in there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I'm,
see
seeing,
the antenna field.
I'm seeing the entire program. It's spot on, 100%.
Yeah,
Okay,
I am
thank you.
too.
Okay, good. Because as I was sharing, at least I thought I was.
You are.
I'm
So
used to
Paul,
using WebEx. Mhm.
Paul, can you give me some idea about what direction is north?
Yes. Whoops. I hit the scroll button. So that's what I was looking for here. And this is north going this direction here, Mike.
Thank
Right
you.
here. Yep. And so this is traditional Google Earth. And so this is north up here, up near where it says antenna field, roughly speaking. And this is roughly east-west going this way here, going this direction. So this is not exactly perfect. It's more like north, east, southwest that this 80 meter, 40 meter north-south dipole goes. But then this one here is more predominantly east-west. So we just labeled them as best we could with the trees that we had. The Carolina Windom, just so you know, was our bread and butter band for the entire state. We had more contacts on that Carolina Windom than we did on the 160 dipole, the Hustler 6 BTV, the NVIS, and some of the north-south bands here. This one here was our bread and butter because we were in Pittsburgh. If you know where Pittsburgh is, it's almost near the western Ohio border, and everything is east of us as far as counties go. Okay, so everything that you see here this is our bread and butter band, our antennas, and so is this one, because, and Mike, maybe you can speak to this, the Carolina Windom design radiates not just horizontally but vertically, right?
Correct. That has a vertical component, but normally that is on 20 meters is where you get that vertical effect.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've been able to, because of the proximity of the stations that we're trying to achieve, we've been able to get a lot of close-in stations too. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. So here's an impressive piece of information. With all this distance, we had over 2,000 feet of coax involved in this operation. That's why it took us so long and why we were exhausted when we set it up. 9 antennas with 6 guys. It's a bigger operation than field day for us. Okay. So earlier I showed kind of the empty operating environment when I went to the site survey. And so here's game day, as I like to call it. And so down here, well, you know who this clown is, so I'm not going to tell you. But over here, we have a brand new ham, KC3QAH. What a mouthful. Anyway, he's looking to get a vanity call because it's just too hard to even say. So here's his stepdad, Randy. That's N3ZK. He's the chairman of the board. And then him and Frank, N3FB. He's actually a television broadcast engineer for one of the local television stations. This guy here is a retired Navy captain, and this guy here is an aficionado of CW operations. So, and then here's my seat right in here, right in the middle here. So all of us were lined up in a row, and so that we wouldn't have to hear each other talk, we'd be all next to each other. So there's a lot of purpose here, so that we couldn't hear each other yelling at each other, you know, trying to make contacts. We were trying to mitigate all that noise, that local noise, as best we could. And so we started out with, you know, all these different bands here. I'm not going to go through them. Later on, you can see 20 meter drops off, 40 meter drops off, 40 meters drops off, 80 meters, picks up, 160 comes alive. And then we take somebody and we say, look, we need you to search and pounce on all these different bands, and wherever there's contacts, you go get them. And then Sunday, we pick it up again. And it starts off slow, but, you know, calling CQ on 20 when you're trying to get South Texas and Arizona and some of those, you know, Colorado and beyond. I mean, it's a bit early for them in the morning, but we do pick up a few. And like like Olin said, there's a state QSO Party contest, so there's more participants. And so I want you to expect that when you do your next 7QP operation, that you're going to get a lot more visitors than before. So, lessons learned. That little picture on the corner there is just one of our places where we had to walk uphill to go get our antennas. That is probably, let me see, that picture is 150 feet of a 440-foot run of coax that we had to get to the Wyndham field. It's way beyond that tallest tree over here. The Wyndham field was way beyond this point here and went that way. And we tried to keep it away because it made so much noise with all the other antennas. N1MM suggests county for stations from previous years. So if you're pulling out the history file of 7QP, for instance, be careful that those people aren't always going to operate in those counties. So especially for the CW person who's listening for those critical counties, they may be in different, they may be roving. They may not be operating from that one spot every year. Here's a little lesson learned. An 18-inch piece of coax caused me great grief. And it was a purchased piece of coax from a reliable source. So that caused a lot of trouble for me, which I thought was poor band conditions. And I thank you, especially Scott, KF7GGN, who tried really hard to make contact with me, and only to realize that it was this 18-inch piece of coax that was stopping me from hearing you. We still have to work on inter and crossband noise within our operations, because we do have 5 active radios going on at once. And it's challenging when you have that many stations on. It's always going to be a challenge. We try to mitigate it with bandpass filters. We try to mitigate it with RF chokes. We try to mitigate it with separating coax lines, antenna field separation. We've tried a number of things. We're actually going to go this time to and so here's a point for you guys. I don't know if it's virtual or not, but K3LR, Tim Duffy is a well-known contester in this area, and he's also now pretty high up in the DX engineering executive committee. I don't know what his position is, but he offered contesting station what's the word, tours. So you can go to the DX Engineering website and you can check into that, and you can sign up and get a tour of his contesting station. Little known fact there. We tried NVIS this year. I don't have any data points on that until we have our post meeting, so I don't know how well that worked out. 20 meters has typically been tough on Saturday due to the other QSO parties, but once Sunday rolls around, we were able to pound through and get some well-needed West Coast stations. So, how did we do this year? So here's the brag sheet. So you can see, if you're familiar with N1MM, you know, over here we've got 160 meters. We've got, you know, CW, phone, 80 meters. You can see the bread and butter bands right here are 80 meters phone and 40 meter phone. CW is only limited by the fact that we've got 2 operators that are trying to work within phone interference. And so if they were left unattended, I think they could probably easily double their numbers. There's a couple of 15 meter contacts I did, but it was barely there, only because of the California QSO, sorry, the Arizona State QSO party that was going on. So we made a little over 1,000 QSOs amongst 5 of us operating over the 2-day period. We were able to produce 171,000 points. That's way beyond our normal average. We beat our personal best. So not only did we meet our goal of hitting all 67 counties, you can see that over here in N1MM, everything's checked. Using the tri-band beam, we were able to get 59 out of the 84 possible ARRL sections. Thank you. And you can see where we had trouble. Look at this. Mostly in VE land. Mostly in VE land. A couple in 6 because they were troublesome. A couple in 7, but we did get Oregon. Thank you. Represent. And but look, you know, Alaska, Wyoming, they're all missing. Idaho, I don't know where they went. So this is a year-long planning event. We do this casually, but throughout the year. There's Eddie right there, the youngest ham that we just indoctrinated. He's holding the broom, which is representing of the clean sweep. So we're really proud to have him and certainly to help hoist the antennas as well. So there he is. There I am, the cheesy photo. I almost didn't put it in there, but okay. I'm embarrassing myself. So any questions?
I have one, Paul.
Yep.
So 80 meters really worked for you guys, it looked like. And I'm not surprised, since you're basically covering the state of Pennsylvania, right? Was that mostly, because you said you weren't sure with the NBIS, and you know, how that worked out versus, say, the, what other ones you have? You had the Wyndham on 80, I think,
Yeah,
and then you had the
the
40,
Wyndham
80.
was the bread and butter, and so far the good question, Scott. The 80-meter dipole center fed with a 4-to-1 Ballon is exactly what we put up there, and they are specifically cut for in between, right between the CW and the phone bands.
How high up was that one?
35 feet.
Oh, okay. So that was basically NBIS too. Yeah.
Yep.
So, okay, I'm not surprised. So all those, the 399 contacts, I would assume mostly were in the evening, right? On Saturday night?
They were throughout, well, 40 was
Okay.
throughout the day, 80
Yeah.
was starting about 4 p.m. and going on through about 9 p.m. Yep.
Okay, okay. Because, you know, when you talk to, you know, I guess I was the only one from this end who was really trying to work you guys from our club. So I didn't make that many contacts because like you said, you know, the Arizona people were on this end of the country were really drowning you out. I mean, I was on CW and that would have been usually easier for me. But even with that, I think there were so many Arizona guys that were on that you know, the weaker Pennsylvania stations just were not being heard. And I didn't hear anybody also on this end. You mentioned Montana, Idaho, and those states. I don't think I heard any operators from any of those states. Even the Nevada, you know, Nevada also had a QSO party going on.
Yep.
I think I only heard 2 stations rather, from Nevada the whole time. So, I mean, you know, I'm not saying that I was listening to everybody, you know, every station that was possibly on there, but I basically was just searching and pouncing. Obviously, I couldn't run in your contest, but it was, and I didn't have a band scope, so I didn't see a waterfall plot. You know, I was at the LFC station. We didn't have anything like that there. So I just kind of just tuned the knob around and, you know, got what I could get. And I only got, you know, maybe about 50 contacts. So, you know, it wasn't super fruitful. But like I said, it was mostly because on the West Coast, you guys were being pretty much drowned out, the weaker stations anyway. But the ones that were coming in, you know, strongly were heard, and I didn't have any problem being heard on that end for some reason. When I try to work you, I guess, you know, I told you you were weak, but I could hear you. But that was when you had the problem with the coax, that like 18-inch piece of coax. So that was, we can't go by anything
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
regarding
have to,
propagation.
we'll have to fix that next time.
Yeah, because I had a feeling it was something really weird. Because I should have heard you. But anyway, we'll try again next year.
Yep. Thanks for the input, Scott.
Yeah.
And the thing that you experienced was some of the folks were on the Arizona QSO party were actually on 20 meters beaming east, looking
Yeah.
for sections like I was looking west.
Mhm.
So that's
Yeah.
why you didn't hear part of them. Yep.
That's true. Anyway, congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, I got you. I got a question for you. How did you deal with the COVID-19 pandemic that we're in the middle of?
We didn't.
And
He just said, screw it.
in retrospect, was that a good decision?
It was fine. There was no
What do you
issues.
say?
We all knew each other. We are all professional people. We all knew that if there was any issues personally, medically, that we would share those in advance. And there was no issues with any respiratory challenged individuals. So we went forward and we shared chili bowls. We shared beer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. We did not make it a big thing unless you were susceptible and then you had to maintain your own comfort level. And there were 6 of us there.
Okay.
Good question.
Paul, another question. What was there anything special about your headsets? Since you guys were in such close proximity and yelling into the microphones, how did you handle that?
So interestingly enough, I have a Heil Pro set, and the other day, 3 weeks ago, I tried on, big mistake. Don't ever try on somebody's better headset. Just don't do it because your credit card will fly out of your wallet. And so I tried on my buddy Randy's Pro Set 7 and I went, wow, this is really comfortable and I can hear way more signal. And so I, called Gigaparts and, click, 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 done. And so it was like, is somebody saying something? Oh, okay. Dinner's ready? Okay, thanks. Like it was that tight. It was like you couldn't hear anything that was going on around you unless you turned down the left volume that allowed you to hear what was going on in ambient noise. It was fabulous.
Pro 7, you said?
Highly
Okay.
recommend.
Look into that, yeah. What about radios? Did everybody have a really up-to-date radio that had very good roofing filters and all that kind of stuff?
Good question. Thank you. Yeah, so mine was the lowest rated radio in the room, and it was a 7300. And we had a original class 756 on CW. We had an SDR on CW. We had a Yaesu 300, 3000 on phone. We had I'm thinking 756 Pro 2 and Pro 3.
Okay.
And everybody had their own bandpass filters this year for the first time.
So one of the things you had marked in there about having to reset your 7300, what happened? Was confusion with coax or is that from some other thing you shot your foot with?
Yes, 9mm aim at foot, pull trigger. So I had good question, Mike. I had a problem with the bandpass filter that I showed you on the website. When it got delivered, it was slightly damaged so that the knob wouldn't work manually all the way. So I had somebody build a controller that went between my rig that detected the band and then switched it automatically. And so those cables were the mitigating factor. They were not shielded enough. And so they were picking up RF stray and sending it. in all kinds of places, and including that 18-inch piece of coax that I have since I've cut in half and hung in effigy on my ham shack wall, and said, "Never shall you ever transmit again." And so those kinds of things all contributed to the inability to contest in a high performance manner. It's amazing. Something this long can be so detrimental,
Sure.
and it would be better if it was broken, Mike, but it wasn't. It was half working. That was the problem.
And that's typical for coax. It's not like it's on or off. When you have a problem with your coax, it's some undetermined state in between on and off where it sort of works.
Right. And I determined it at early, and this is a good input for you guys and gals as well, is that I determined that the propagation was just poor because no one else was telling me that it wasn't, because I was the only one on 20 meters that day. So for 2 hours, I kept calling into crappy coax.
Into the abyss. Yeah, that one of the things that helps is to make sure you carry a dummy load with you. And before you attach that cable, that coax to your antenna, drop a dummy load on it, take an antenna analyzer, see if it says 50 ohms across the frequency that you're supposed to be using it on.
Yep, absolutely. I got caught up into the contest mode and I just went straight forward.
Well,
I forgot the basics.
That's a good lesson for all of us. You know, you take a dummy load, like Mike says, hook it up to, before before the coax actually goes out to the antenna, like from the tuner, let's say, wherever, make sure everything's okay, and then connect the antenna.
Olin, you're looking
But
at me like you've been through this before.
Well, it's amazing with the long coax runs you guys had that you didn't have problems with those.
Well, we did have some interference, Scott, and we still need to study that. We're actually pretty close. We're within an hour of that K3LR contest station by Tim Duffy that I mentioned, and we're gonna try to go up there and get a tour and try to get some get some good advice. But again, we're expeditionary every single time, so we can't be permanent and set it up perfectly.
Sure.
So if we can't tune it for performance, we have to tune it for whatever is offered to us.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, it sounds like you had a good time in any case.
Back to you, Anthony.
All right. Yeah, sounds
Thanks,
like your Airbnb host probably wouldn't be too kind with you running a bunch of like quadruple shielded coax that you've grounded every like 10 feet with 30-foot ground rods or something like that. That just bury some like copper screen underneath the yard.
So the one thing I forgot to tell you is that we rented this beautiful, well-suited, Airbnb area thing, but underneath us was 5 horses that were kicking the stalls halfway through the night, and they were keeping us awake because they wanted their food.
Mm-hmm. Poor guys.
Next time, take hay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.